By the end of today's episode, you'll know what the most important part of the self-tape is and how to make sure yours is strong. Welcome to the Actor's Career Compass, where we help aspiring screen actors find high-quality auditions, sign with great agents, and book major roles in legit productions. I'm your host, Martin Benson, and in today's episode, you will learn the single most important part of the self-tape and how to ensure yours is on point, how to make sure your slate flows smoothly into the rest of your self-tape, and how to use framing, lighting, and performance choices to make a strong first impression. Okay, so what is the most important part of the self-tape? Well, if you haven't already guessed, it is the first few seconds. Okay, the reason that this part is so important is that casting directors are very quickly going to turn off your self-tape if they're not impressed within the first couple of seconds, right? They have a million auditions to watch, and they're just watching the first few seconds to decide whether to watch the rest. So even if the rest of your self-tape is super strong, it does not matter at all if the first couple of seconds is slightly off, because casting directors won't ever get to it. They're going to assume that if the first few seconds are off, which to them, they're thinking that that's the most important part that you probably spent the most time on, they're going to assume that the rest of it is just going to go downhill from there. And this is unfortunate because many actors do get off to a bit of a rocky start in auditions and self-tapes. And then the audition usually gets much better as it goes further on. But when it comes to self-tapes, they don't have to wait until you're finished, like in an in-person audition. Like, they can't kick you out of the room, usually, in an in-person audition without coming off as like super rude. But with a self-tape, they can just turn it off immediately. This basically means that if you are not absolutely 100% on point from the very beginning of your self-tape, it's over. So how do you start off well? Well, you have to make sure that you are completely in character right from the very beginning. Now, I highly recommend learning how to do some very simple editing on your computer so that you can start the tape from the best moment and you don't have to press record on your camera and then walk over into position, right? Some actors, they use a remote recording clicker thing where they can start while they're standing in front of the background ready to go. But even that, like pressing the button, can throw off your performance once you've gotten into character and you're ready to go. So instead, I recommend learning how to use a simple editing program on your computer. And then what you can do is have it cut so that the start is right when you're ready to go. So this way you start the camera rolling and then you completely close your eyes. You take a moment to get in character and then just go. And you don't have to worry about pressing record on a little button or anything that can throw you off, because you know that later, once you get the footage into your computer, you'll be able to start it right after you've opened your eyes and you're going into it. Now, one simple trick that you can actually use to get into character very quickly and feel instantly grounded, calm, and strong, and get out of your own head is to use a concept that I call pride words. I have a special way of figuring out what your actual pride words are, but I'm not going to be able to discuss that in today's podcast episode. I'll save that for a future one. Instead, all I want you to do is come up with some initial words right off the bat. Just basically think about 2 or 3 personality trait qualities that, if you fully embodied them, would make you feel very proud. So, for example, let's say that your words wind up being strong, intelligent, and loving. Like, hey, I am strong, I'm also intelligent, and I'm also loving. And when I think about those words, they make me feel proud. Okay, great. So what you would do is you would go and press record. Then you would get in front of the camera and you'll close your eyes for a second and you'll think of each of those words one by one and feel it, right? So you close your eyes and you go, strong. You feel strong. And then intelligent. You think about it and feel it. And then loving. And you just feel loving for a moment. And then you open up your eyes and you go right into it. And because, again, you're editing it on your computer afterwards, you don't have to worry about pressing the recorder or doing any of that stuff. You can just do the cut and then go. But you're going to notice that most, if not all, of your worry, nervousness, whatever other feelings you had going on are just going to disappear. And instead, you'll feel very grounded and in character immediately. And then you can go straight into your performance from a much stronger, more grounded state, meaning that the first few seconds of your audition tape are going to be extremely strong. Now remember, in many cases, casting directors are also going to see your slate at the beginning of the self-tape. So if possible, I recommend recording your slate separately and then having a simple jump cut before starting your scene. This is going to give you the ability to drop into character. Now, if you can't do that, or if you're not allowed and you need to say your slate first without any cut, feel free, but use your pride words before you even say your slate. So you feel those words, then you open your eyes and you go, hey, my name is Martin Benson, and blah, 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 anything that they're asking you to say, and then you just go right into it. You should still be in enough of that grounded state, even after doing your slate, that you can go into the performance very strong. I do have another podcast episode where I dive deep on how to do a strong slate. It is episode number 88, how to create a strong video slate to land auditions. So I do recommend checking that one out. But the idea here is using those pride words will get you into character, and then hopefully you can stay in character even after you've completed your slate. Again, if you have to do one back to back and you're not allowed to have a cut in between. Another thing that you can consider when it comes to your slate, making sure that it doesn't throw people off, is to say your slate in a way that matches the scene's energy, right? So for instance, if it's a very somber, sad scene, you would want to say your slate more quietly. If it's a loud or energetic or funny scene, then obviously you would say your slate in a much happier and brighter mood. Otherwise, if it's too different, your slate will seem jarring when a totally different scene comes right after it, and it could kind of throw off the casting director and make your performance seem slightly off, even if it's not. Now, another thing that you need to keep in mind, and this should go without saying when it comes to your self-tape setup, is in just the first couple of seconds, the casting director, agent, or manager who's watching it is going to make a judgment on how seriously you take your career simply by what your slate setup looks like. If you don't use a professional setup, they're going to assume that you're very new and you don't know what you're doing. So you need to be absolutely sure that the lighting and the framing and the sound are all on point. I'll be doing a separate podcast episode that dives deep on those technical details at some point in the future. Now, the final thing that you want to keep in mind is the importance of making clear, well-defined choices. Obviously, this should also go without saying, and it applies to the audition as a whole, but it's also just as important for the first few seconds of the self-tape. If the choices that you're making are not extremely clear, the rest of your performance is going to suffer, and the viewer is going to get lost or confused while they're watching it. So I highly recommend listening to my podcast episode on the 4 levels of acting to have a better understanding of what goes into strong choices. The 4 levels of acting podcast is number 45. That's episode number 45. So that's pretty much it for today. Thank you for listening. If you do want to dive deeper on creating memorable auditions and performances, I actually recommend checking out my podcast called Unlocking the Secret to Memorable Performances by using the likability factor. That's episode number 112. It's all about how to stand out to casting directors. So again, this is episode number 112, Unlocking the Secret to Memorable Performances by using the likability factor, and it's on the Actor's Career Compass. Lastly, if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, you can learn more about how that works on my website at martinbenson.com. You can sign up for the waitlist there, and you also get some of my top tips to book more acting work. Coaching spots usually open up every few months, and I'll keep you up to date. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.